Buenos dias. Good day. My name is Leroy Pacheco, President and CEO of the New Mexico Community Development Loan Fund. We're a nonprofit organization that has been in business for over 30 years. We've made over $112 million of small business loans and created over 12,000 jobs in the last 30 years. I've been working in banking, small business administration, nonprofits for over 50 years. I'm pleased today to bring you a bilingual workbook developed by Dr. Marvin Lozano and his wife, Dr. Michela Rivera, psychologist. I think you're going to be excited to take a look at a bilingual approach for Latinos throughout the United States and elsewhere. I am pleased to announce today that we have developed a bilingual approach workbook that I believe will be a resource for those of you that own or run family-owned businesses. You will see the importance of culture. You will see the importance of good planning, good organizational charts with roles that are describing exactly what your cousin, your grandmother, your aunt, your father, your mother should be doing in the success of your family-owned businesses. Come and take a ride with us. I think you'll enjoy it. Come and learn about balancing business, family, and culture. I invite you to take a look at this workbook. You will hear also testimonials from successful business owners throughout the United States. They will tell you intimate details about their own family business and the generations that go back in making sure that culture and family is integrated into the operation of a successful business. Again, take a ride with us. I welcome you to take a look at this workbook. I hope it will become another tool in your toolbox for successful business. Gracias.
Hi, welcome to the podcast on balancing business, family, and culture. My name is Michela Rivera.
And I'm Marvin Lozano.
Together, Marvin and I have co-authored a book. I'm a psychologist and have a lot of experience in terms of doing private practice, working with children, youth, and families. I've also done administrative work with state government for early childhood, consulted with early childhood programs. I've also done years in community mental health and community-based clinics. And again, private practice, which includes many hours of work with Latinos. That is actually my dedication, and I really like doing that work. So I had the opportunity to co-author a book with Marvin Lozano, and we are here together today. And it is aimed at helping U.S. Latinos develop businesses, successful businesses, that balance the work itself with family and culture.
Thank you, Michela. I would like to share a little bit about myself. And basically, this work that we've put together in this book is a labor of passion, if you will. I began working in community-based lending many years ago out of college as someone who was very interested in helping those that were disadvantaged and socially and economically unable to fulfill their economic dreams. And over a number of years went through the commercial banking industry in various levels. I was fortunate to have good assignments where I managed portfolios of small businesses to large international Spanish-speaking companies outside the country, and transitioned from that into teaching entrepreneurship at a community college and saw a need for a product that could meet the needs of folks that came from programs, or rather from families where they did not have access to small business opportunities. And so I'm happy to be here with you today and share some thoughts with you.
Our topic today is vision and mission. I'll have Marvin talk a little bit about that.
So in that regard, when we talk about vision, it's basically viewed as the dream that you have for your vision for your business. The mission includes what action steps you use to get to that vision. We hope that this product will help viewers develop your business more clearly. For those who are following with our book, we've written it with the intent of addressing that particular topic in the first chapter, actually. So we'd like for you to take away three major areas, if you will. The first one being that it's important to start your business with a vision, a dream of what you want to accomplish. The second thing is develop a clear mission, and that outlines the actions that you will take to realize your vision. Ask yourself, how does my business meet a need or improve the lives of others? And that's critical, because by meeting a need, then you open up the doors to really providing a good product or service to those that you want to work with.
Our guest today is Susan Matteucci. Susan was born in Cincinnati, but was raised in Chicago. So she's a true Midwesterner, Chicago lifelong, early years in Chicago. She attended and received a bachelor's degree at Northwestern, there in Chicago, and then got a master's degree in urban planning out of MIT in Boston. She has an interesting work background, and you'll find out more about it in a few minutes. Susan worked with the Women's Self-Empowerment Project and the Full Circle Project in Chicago. In 1992, Susan moved to New Mexico, and in 1994 founded the Southwest Creations Collaborative, which she'll describe in more detail. She's been very active in philanthropic and community-based boards, including Breakthrough in Santa Fe, where she has been the president of the board, and also has served on the Davis Scholars board as well, which she can describe a little bit later. She has also been active with the International Women's Forum here in New Mexico. Susan is married and has 2 children, and I think I've talked enough about her, and I'm going to ask her to share with us some background information about your growing up years, but also your professional life that has led you to working here with Southwest Creations.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. I've known Marvin for many years, and it's wonderful to meet you. I grew up in, my dad got transferred from Chicago to Cincinnati, and so we were sort of fish out of water there. My parents are first generation Italian. My mom actually grew up in Italy, and my grandfather lived with us. And my grandfather, who I was super close with because I had 3 older brothers, and so he was kind of my buddy, never went to school in Italy or here. So he was basically non-literate. I remember him holding a newspaper if somebody gave it to him, but he couldn't read it. He knew how to write his name. And I remember just how warm and smart and wonderful he was throughout my whole life, and such a novelty there because it was a very kind of German area. And so my grandfather, Nonno, which is what we called him, it's his grandfather in Italian, he actually was a crossing guard for all the little kids in the neighborhood for the schools. So everybody sort of knew him, and he was it was unusual to have an elder, in the neighborhood like that. That wasn't what it was like at that time. And, as I got older and I realized his experience, when he came over on a boat because a brother had come over first. He went to go work in the copper mines in northern Michigan. And he said the best thing that ever happened to him was that a donkey sat on his toe and broke it, so he couldn't go down. I mean, they would literally dig a hole and then, send the young kids down there. It was really pretty awful, right? And then because immigration was the way it was then, he was able to come to Chicago and get a job at Western Electric, which hired, the expression WAP which means without papers, right? That's where all my Italian relatives were WAPs. They came to this country without papers, but were able to get great jobs, raise their kids. My parents didn't go to college, but then all their grandchildren were able to go to college. So for me, it's so interesting in the work that I do now, seeing how closely related the experiences have been with many of the people that I work with, but not having the opportunity to be fully welcomed in this country and be able to become part. And also the Italian family that I was from was light-skinned. We could blend in, right? And it was more of a novelty to be ethnic as opposed to something like, derogatory or to be hidden. So anyway, my family, in Chicago, very much lived in all the Italian neighborhoods. And it was quite celebrated. And that idea of family was super important to all of us. And so then I went to college and I got super interested in how communities worked and flourished. Because in Chicago at that time, if you went to this block and this block, that was the Polish neighborhood. And you went to this block and this block, that was the Italian neighborhood. There were very specific areas of town where people supported one another, grew businesses, had family connections, and that was certainly true in Mexican and Puerto Rican neighborhoods as well. So I got very interested in how that works and how women fit into that world of work and supporting their families. So when I went to graduate school, I worked in community development and I was exposed to a lot of international programs. And one of the ones that I was exposed to was the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, which is Muhammad Yunus has gone on to win a Nobel Peace Prize. One of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. And he would come to Chicago and talk to us about how we would form these borrowing circles, which is what the whole peer group lending models were started in Bangladesh and India, where people had no collateral, right? So your collateral was your word. So 5 people, 5 women or 5 men, but in Grameen Bank, it was mostly women, would come together and I couldn't borrow unless you paid your bill. You couldn't borrow until the next person did. So it was this peer pressure, peer support that really helped keep people going in their businesses. And the loans are very small and repeat. And I got a chance to go there and witness it, which was really remarkable. And the thing I took away from that for how it related to the work I was doing in Chicago, though, is if a woman had a chicken in Bangladesh and it laid an egg and somebody could bring that egg to market, she was an entrepreneur. It's much more complicated, right? In Chicago, where I was working with women in the Women's Self-Employment Project who were trying to start small businesses using the same group lending model because you had to have licenses and everything was much more. So my favorite business was a woman who had a tackle box and it was full of pedicure, manicure stuff. And she would go into the big office buildings in Chicago on break and the secretaries or people, they had lounges and she'd go and do manicures and pedicures or people who were kitchen beauticians. But it was all informal economy because it was very difficult to break into that world, right? And so I saw that. But what I also saw was that there was such a willingness for, when we formed these borrowing groups, for 5 people who didn't even know each other to come together to form this borrowing circle and want to be with people that were positive and it could help them and they wanted to start anew. So the lending wasn't the issue, it was more the connection to a market. So I was very impressed by that.
Susan, tell us a little bit more about the work, the actual work being done with Southwest Creations.
Sure. The learning, again, with the entrepreneurship from Bangladesh was that and taking it to Chicago, was that I knew we had to have access to market. So if you're going to create good, consistent jobs, you need to have a way to make sure that you can sell your services or your product consistently. So what we realized is, even though everybody here is very talented and artistic, the best way for us to organize was that we would become a group of people that could provide production, contract manufacturing production, to other businesses. as opposed to doing a vertical chain where we're selling our products. Because when you do the vertical chain to sell your own products, much of your money and attention goes into product development, marketing, and not to the labor force, right? Because the labor force is always the least consideration when people are finding a business. You know, they want it to be as cheap as possible, how can made, and ours was upside down. We wanted to create good, consistent, year-round jobs. So we became a cut and sew handwork contract manufacturer, working in soft goods for domestic and international companies across the country.
How do you see that experience as helping you form your dream and vision for the work you do today here with Southwest Creations?
Yes, it had a big impact on me. And I am one of, there were 8 founders here, and 7 of them are still here. So I feel we all did this together, right? We did different pieces of it, but we're all still at it and making sure that our vision and mission was clear. And one of the things that was clear about that was when I was in, when I was in Bangladesh and had the chance to learn about these international programs, you know, this whole idea of social enterprise for them is not new. They've been doing it all the time, where economic development is attached to programming, is attached to other things. In the United States, a lot of that work is kind of thought of as protected employment for people who can't make it, like Goodwill or people coming out of prisons or other places.
Okay.
And we just decided that one of the theory of change that we use, and I learned just from the projects I was exposed to, was if you give a woman a chance to earn income, she's going to invest it in her children. And that is true all over the world. So that was the mission and vision that we brought to Southwest Creations, that we were going to give moms and grandmothers and aunties and whoever was in their family an opportunity to earn income, and that we knew that would be the best way to alleviate poverty and to have their children have the best chance for success.
So a question I have is, your vision and mission, which is the focus of this interview, is that social change and economic development has been very important to you.
Yes.
And so what are the thoughts on ways that Latino and Latina entrepreneurs can work through their business to promote entrepreneurial social justice?
I think it needs to be very intentional from the beginning of your business. I know a lot of people try to add it on after they start a business, and that's hard. I mean, I think the culture of your workplace, whether it's 5 people in a family or 50 people here, about what your intention is. And of course, to be in business, I don't care if you're a social change business or not, you have to be able to make money to stay in business. So I think that's an actual really important part. Like you have to do business, and you have to make sure that your business can cover its costs. I see a lot of people start off with the notion of, we're going to start a business where everybody can make this much money, we have all these benefits, but they don't have anything to sell or do to make the money, right? So it's this interesting line, I think, of what is market-driven externally that you can make sure you can make money, and what are your internal values. If you're a family-based business, what does that look like? Or if you're going to encourage the people that work with you to be invested in their families, what does that look like? And I remember a big example for us was, if you're paid a salary and you need to go to your child's school for some reason, crisis or otherwise, you can go. You just go. Nobody says a word. If you punch a clock and you get called from school to go, people are afraid to ask. Other people are like, oh, it's impossible because we're doing production, anything like that. It really interrupts the ability for people to be able to parent and have a job, right? And so I think everybody cares about their kids, but I think in the community that we work with, it's such a focal point of everyday, all-day life. And so we give people 2 hours a month of paid time to be, if they plan it, to be able to go into the schools and work with their teacher and the child to help them make sure they're on the right track. And the way we do that intentionally is that they plan it, so it's not this just reactive, so we can plan our production, but we can, and it can work, and that also helps job retention. So what I'm trying to get is that you can be very supportive of the families that work with you, and that if you just set up sort of a compromiso of what they need to do to make that work and what you need to do to make that work. So that if I think people have said to us, our customer service is so great. And I think the reason for that is because everybody cares so much here, because they care about their job, but they care about this whole that we're offering. It's more, this is our home. This is our, these kids are, we're their tias, right? So there is that connection. Now, not all businesses are like that, but I think in this community, what I'm learning is, and have learned for many years, and love and flourish in, is it's your mothers, your workers, your grannies, your this, your cooks, your cleaners, you do whatever you need to do to make it work, and it's all beautiful. So I think that is something that we can learn from Latino culture that would work with any businesses, right? I mean, people will work super hard, and they'll also value all the other things in life that take importance. So that's what I've learned.
Okay. Well, those are really, really meaningful, timely lessons that you've learned, which leads me to my next question specifically for you. But you're saying that basically, if the business owner, the Latino business owner, plans to address these concerns, that's the intentionality. You do it on purpose. You plan it.
Yes.
And build it in. And that's what you've done.
Yes.
Okay. Well, obviously, you were very busy doing this major project, and I know you had a lot of people working on the establishment of Southwest Creations. My question is, you're the mother of two,
right?
And you commute to work.
Right.
How did you balance all what it has taken and took here, and what family needed up in Santa Fe?
Well, my youngest son, I was pregnant when we first got started. I had a 2-year-old, and that was sort of a surprise, the second one. And this kind of gets at your Latino family comment. So I remember we were just meeting, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, I'm pregnant already. We're just starting this project. We were meeting in the parish hall, and we were using all the stuff I learned from Grameen Bank. They have these 16 decisions that are like their values that people have to sort of agree and memorize and whatever. And that's how you get your job, right? That's about those kinds of implementing the values. So we were working on what were ours, what was going to matter to us. And I remember like yesterday, I came and said, well, I got to tell you something, I'm pregnant. And they were like, that's wonderful. Congratulations. How beautiful. Okay, now back to work. It was like, oh, this is all part of life, right? I mean, in my peers, when you had a baby, the baby stayed over here or with a nanny. And here we started an on-site daycare for 25 cents an hour, where our children, which we still have to this day, where our kids were. So my son, George, my youngest son, drove with me from the day I could drive here back and forth, and went to the daycare and grew up here. And my oldest son at that point was already in preschool. So one day a week, I would work at home so I could be there. But, it worked. And I think that they just thought that was normal and wonderful. And so when George started preschool, finally, when he was like 4, I think, he cried the first day. I said, Georgie, what's the matter? He goes, Mom, when they make you lay down, they make you listen to music. And I said, what's wrong with that? He goes, I can only sleep to the news. So he'd get in the car, I'd turn on the news, he'd instantly fall asleep, back and forth. So that's how he dealt with a commute. And it was a very rich, these people love him and raised him, right? And Ben too, my older son. It really grew up to be something that was part of their lives. And it was hard when they were little. But also, I have to say, now that they're older, I have more time to worry about work, right? There's something about the distraction or having the multitask that helps it all feel a little bit more balanced. And now they're on their own and luckily very happy and successful. And so now I have all that time to worry more about work, to be honest.
Well, and there requires a lot of self-care as well to keep the energy going to do the work. Well, at home and
yes,
officially at home and
here.
Here.
If this is kind of a question, I think maybe to what Marvin was talking about. If this were my business and I was just the sole owner and I came here every day, it wouldn't either serve me or I don't think it would serve it. We have a leadership team here that makes the decisions, always based on how does this work for our business to make it work? How does it base for the culture that we're in? What do we need to hold accountable, to ourselves and our community? And what do people need? All those things are ongoing all the time. And that really keeps me invested in going, and I think all of us going. We're all smarter together than just thinking one person has all the answers.
That's a great answer. And it sort of transitions to another question we have. And you've been answering it also at this time, which is managing cultural differences.
Right.
These are ways you manage cultural differences.
Yes. And I've had to, I'm more, city direct, kind of like self. And I've learned, we laugh because when I will pinch when I should not speak. I let other people speak like, you know what I mean? It's like, and I've had to, it's just constantly, if I insert myself in the middle of something, like here's a problem and I see it and I'm like, here's what we should do. When usually people have already kind of figured it out. And the best way is for people to tell me what they think, and then I can offer suggestions and then they can implement it. But making sure that people feel that they're empowered to implement their decisions and whatever, because on the production floor, people are working really hard all day long. And then just decision making about what happens here. And I think because we've been together so long, people have no trouble telling me like, no, you're wrong. You know what I mean? Like we just hired 2 new people. And there's some thought about if you start people together, that's better because then, you're training them together and then you're this. And I said, well, what do we think about that? And I said, what about starting them together? And every single person at the table said, nah, it's not a good idea. And I'm like, okay, you start them whenever you want to start them. So there's a lot of trust, I think, in that regard. We also have very different roles. And I think we respect the roles that, I can't sew, which is sort of the joke around here. It's like, oh, that's so easy. Susan could do it. So, they know, they know what they know and I know what I know. And then there's a lot of making sure like when people have to say things in different languages or, speak in English when it's not their first language, I think there's enough comfortability that they'll show it to me first. Like, is this okay? And they bear with my bad Spanish. So it's a back and forth, but mostly what I've learned is to step back.
I'm hearing respect and relationships.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
Well, and I have huge respect. And I think making sure that for the people I work with, and I think making sure that you can have respect, but you have to train yourself to listen, right? Sometimes, especially when you talk a lot like I do. So, we joke, sometimes if I'm talking too much, they'll go, Susan, shut up, so it's been that. And they've learned, we learned how to navigate in this culture and this market, and we're in the United States making money. And so there's a way of doing business and behaving that is also true, right? So yes. I think there's a mutual respect on that we trust how to navigate those things together.
So there's learning on both sides.
I think so.
What you're
I
talking
hope so.
about.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
What, Susan, are the biggest stressors that the women here at Southwest Creations face?
The things that worry them the most always have to do with family and kids, right? I mean, I think, they come to work and, we start at 7:30 and it's a very physical job. So people get tired and there's, there's things that happen on the floor and there's dynamics and everything. But I would say what gets to people, during COVID, many, many people here lost immediate family members here in Mexico. And children and grandchildren, that's what wears people way down. So trying to be a resource for that, trying to get people to share that and know that's not a vergüenza, and that's a big part of what we try to do. If your kid is struggling, you're being a good mother if you're coming up and figuring out how to deal with it, not that you're a bad mother because your kid is struggling, right? Our whole ASIA program is about that. Like if kids need special help in schools, how do you talk to the teacher? It's all about that trust that we build with families that then we can be that person intermediary or help them with the teacher in the school setting, figure out how to break it down. Because if you're worried about your kid, you're defensive, you haven't been to this school system before, and you feel judged, right? Boom. So start off a parent-teacher conference that way, right? So how do you get beyond that? How does ASIA Toward the University is our program that works with that.
Great program.
So I think, though, that that's, probably what we all worry about the most, right, is our families.
It occurs to me that what you've been talking about really has a lot to do with the very issues that employers are facing nationally
Yes.
in the United States. That employees don't stick around because they don't feel like they matter. They want to feel like they matter, like what they're doing is important. Maybe not as high paying, but that they are important and that they make a difference.
Right.
And that there is pride in doing that. And that's really, I've been reading increasingly with the problem of hiring people, finding enough people who want to work, that many of them soon leave when they don't feel valued. But that's different here. And that's one of the things that you're talking about. And also, you allow people to learn by solving their own problems, which is far more time consuming sometimes, but far more impactful. It has a big impact because they learn it, they develop it, they're the end users, they'll figure it out. Right. And it sounds like you're learning too, which is everybody wins.
Yes, and when somebody's interviewed here, we evaluate people 50% on their performance in production and 50% on their participation in programs. So when you're here, you have to participate in an adult education program of your choice. We do English, GED, citizenship. Some people get their associate's degree at CNM. And basically, we pay 2 hours a month towards the time that people invest in that theirself, 2 hours of their own time. So they're in class 4 hours a week in something. Sometimes people, they want a job so much that they'll come and they'll say yes to everything. But we say, look, if you have kids, we want them to be in ASIA. If you need to be in these classes. Like, on the flip side of what you're saying is that we do take it personally, if you know what I mean. Like, you are not here just for your hands. And some people don't like that kind of work environment. They want to be left alone. So we're not for everybody, clearly. But we have very, very, very low turnover. And sometimes too low, but people stay here because of the things that you mentioned. And we also work, my big thing is this is consistent, full-time, year-round work with paid vacation time, sick days. Like, you can plan on it. You can know, and what you need to do is what you need to do, and what we need to do is find enough business and cross-train people so that if this customer is slow, which really happened, I was talking about during the inflationary period, we can move you to somewhere else. So it's not like you come one day, you leave another. Oh, we don't have work, or we do. We've never missed a paycheck, payroll in 28 years. This is a stable thing. And if you take care of it, if we all take care of it, we can continue growing and doing. Not that we've, during the recession, we laid some people off. We lost a big contract. Some other people had to go part-time, and we made it through. We have to adapt to the market. But we do everything we can to make it work for the people here.
The workers understand why you're doing that.
Sure, to the extent of, right. People don't, they want it to work, right? When you have a job, you want to be able to make sure, I don't want to worry about that. But every month we do a staff meeting, and we do kind of an open book management where we look at our finances. And we have a little game about, what do you think? Okay, what did you see on the floor? What do you think here's our goal for production. We have a goal for production every month financially. And then we do a game on people guessing what that goal was, how close can they get? So people are involved in understanding, and they can tell. And I'll say, what happened last month? Oh, we were really busy. Okay, or we were slow, or this happened, or that happened. So trying to get people in a very small way this is for the whole team. The leadership team does much more open book management. But, just to make sure people understand that has an impact on what we are able to do.
I was really, really impressed and excited about the things that Susan's saying. So one of the things that I'm thinking of is the focus of this chapter is vision and mission, and how vision is really the passion that any entrepreneur has for what they do.
Right.
And the mission, of course, is how do you do it, right? What are the action steps? And it's easier said than done. And I'm thinking that there are a lot of startup entrepreneurs, or even those that are in business, that have struggled and continue to do so in the economic climate we're in and the social challenges that are out there. What are those things that you would point out to them if they asked you, gee, how do I continue? How do I keep on keeping on with my vision and mission?
Right.
That you shared many of them already. I'm just thinking in the takeaway form, what would be, what comes to mind?
Well, part of it is just like being a little hard-headed, like you're going to make it work, right? I mean, I think that really goes with, I think entrepreneurs, and you can be an entrepreneur in anything you do, right? Mm-hmm. But I think, and what I mean by that is you're going to figure it out. It might be different than you thought. So you might have a plan that you're going to do X, Y, Z and sell this, and then that's not working. And I think what an entrepreneur needs to do is, okay, how can I adapt and be flexible in the time that we are now? Like, for example, I mean, during COVID, we made face masks. And some other opportunities that weren't what we thought, but we were working because we needed to supply them, and it was a great way for people to make money when their families were not working. So we worked all during COVID. And so I think that then, or looking to see like, well, we like to do X because this is my passion and vision. My product is my passion and vision. Well, if people don't agree with that or like it, you might need to pivot. So I think that understanding that if you want to sell burritos and your customers want to buy tortas, you need to sell tortas, right? So I think that there is a balance about when people talk about their passion for their business. And I think we talk about that a long time. There has to be a demand for what you want to do. And so I think being willing to really look at that and ask questions, and you talk about this in your book a lot, about determining your market. I thought that would go talk to people. Do they want what you got to sell, And if they don't, how can you adapt it? So to be flexible enough, and we've got this very flexible workforce that, oh, you want us to assemble this? We can do that. You want us to sew that? We can do that. It's not like, here's what we do, you need to fit into us. It's, we need to be able to fit into as many opportunities as we could find. And I think that just has to be true for everybody. If what you do is so precious to you, that's beautiful. And it might become a great, hobby. But if you want to sell it, it might have to be adapted to fit what other people want.
So flexibility is really important.
I think so.
Adapting and pivoting to that market need.
Yes, and quickly. I had somebody, we got some support from the social venture partners, and I remember somebody saying to me, like when it was before the recession, and he said, Susan, you don't have the money or the time because you feel bad about making a hard decision to wait 2 months because everything's going to go down the tubes and you won't be able to pull it back up. When you see something bad happening, you have to react immediately because that in the long term will preserve you. And that's proven to be true many times.
So the lessons there in that one, because we'll go across the points that we've been discussing, the main points today. But looking back at those lessons, it's responsiveness and accepting what you see,
right?
Not what you wish
you
were seeing.
Exactly.
But you, at the same time, keeping your wish, your vision in mind.
Yes.
Okay, that's one thing. And solving a problem along the way, because I think people become dedicated entrepreneurs when you're solving a problem. Good parents feel very fulfilled when they know they have done a good job raising their children, helping the children learn how to solve their own problems.
Yes.
And so the same model operates, from what I'm hearing you say, both on a job site as well as in the family. A lot of these are transferable lessons.
Yes, and I think what you were saying, I think in the culture that I'm lucky enough to work within, and it's true. That is how it is anyway. There's a lot of interconnectedness. So I think taking the wisdom that you can learn from one and the accountability you can learn from the other and mix it together is a pretty great key for success.
I am inspired. I really appreciate the time today. I think our main takeaways in closing is that vision is important because it's the dream that you start out with. Mission is important because it's the steps you take to make the dream the reality. And then finally, helping other people through business is a sure way of success because people don't forget that if you've helped.
Right.
So those are our takeaways that we wanted to hear about, and you have answered many, many of those in a lot of different examples. And I know that you have others you could probably share as well, other lessons. Marvin, did you have any other?
No,
Closing.
I think it's been a wonderful opportunity to hear what Susan's been able to do here at Southwest Creations Collaborative over the years that it's grown to what it is today and continues to help the community. And the key things that you've pointed to today, the idea that one needs to be flexible,
Right.
to pivot quickly, to adapt quickly, to respect and value others. It's important to hear them from you, and that's I think we're very fortunate to be here.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it.